Once more with feeling.
Hi, I'm Selena from Annie's Bookstop in Worcester, and I'm here with Bruce Coville. Bruce is a middle grade science fiction and fantasy author, or actually speculative fiction author. And he is the author of middle grade series. My Teacher is an Alien and sixth grade Alien, and a number of other books. And for readers unfamiliar with your work, how would you describe what you write?
I've long said that I write either strange books for wonderful children or wonderful books for strange children. They can go either way.
That's great. So, what can readers expect from your latest book?
Well, the latest book is actually an older book. I just spent most of the last 2 years revising a series I'd started back in the mid 1990s called the UNICORN Chronicles. And it was originally supposed to be 3 books written in about 3 years. As it turned out, it was 4 books written over a period of 16 years. I used to call myself the George R.R. Martin of children's books because we get all these letters from people saying, please finish, please finish. And toward the end, it was like, please finish. I started this when I was 11. Now I have 2 children. Then I finally finished it. And then Scholastic kind of booted the publication of the gigantic 4th book. We got the rights back, and I worked with a designer that I know. And she suggested quite sensibly that we resplit the books because the 4th one was mammoth and the 3rd one was like semi-mammoth. And now it's a 7-book series, same material, although I've revised and added material all the way through, did quite a bit of revising. And it's now a 7-book series. And I feel like I've finally fulfilled a promise that I made to readers nearly 30 years ago. And it's finally all available in one complete, first time ever massed edition. It was a relief to finish, I want to tell you.
That's great. That should be wonderful. How many books is this going to be now?
It's 7 now. They're all available
Great.
from my
So,
website, brucecoville.com, or from Amazon.
okay.
I have not been able to make them available otherwise because I can't do a full press run of 7 different books. It's just too much and too much to have in the house.
Great. So, going back, what was the inspiration for that, for the
For the
unicorn book?
Unicorn Chronicles?
Yes.
Well, my second book, I was the unicorn guy for a while, in a way. My second book, way back in 1979, was a picture book called Sarah's Unicorn. My wife had asked me to write this book for her. She said, we'd already done one book together. She's an artist, did the art. And she said, write me a story about a kid with a unicorn. And I wrote it. The little girl is living with a wicked witch who's her aunt, and she meets a unicorn. Used standard unicorn lore. I was very careful to have it meet all the mythic standards. We sent it to our editor, and she said, there's too many books about unicorns. Focus on the little girl and the witch. And I knew I did something it's not usually smart to do. I wrote back and said, you're wrong. There are not books about unicorns. The unicorns mugs, unicorn pads, unicorn stickers, unicorn posters, and unicorn toilet paper. But you cannot find a picture book about unicorns. I can go to the library. I was working as a teacher this time. I could close my eyes and put my hand out about a little girl and a witch. They're everywhere. They're not unicorn books, unicorn picture books. And to her credit, she listened to me. And so we went ahead with that book, which after 50 drafts, I was finished writing. And then about some years later, an editor at Doubleday asked me to do a collection of unicorn stories, which we called the Unicorn Treasury. So when Scholastic, Gene Feiwell, who was the head of Scholastic at the time, Gene asked me to come in and talk about doing a series. And Gene is, as far as I was concerned, she was the smartest woman in publishing, still is. She published Goosebumps, The Babysitter's Club, The American Diaries Club, and Harry Potter. I mean, you don't get a better track record than that. And so we talked about a couple of series ideas. And then she said, a unicorn one. I said, I'm totally there. And we signed a contract for 3 books in 3 years, about 150 pages each. As I said, it took more like 16 years. Was it 16 years? I finished the 4th and final book at 3 o'clock in the morning. I worked on that book on 4 different continents over a period of a decade. And I finished it at 3 o'clock in the morning in a hotel room in Bangladesh, and then flung myself on the hotel bed and sobbed great tears of grief because it was so beautiful and so many sad things had happened, and I was just so freaking happy to have it done.
Wow. You were in Bangladesh when you finished it?
Yeah, I was doing school visits at a school in Bangladesh. I actually loved Bangladesh. I had a great time there.
So did you have to do any, I mean, it's hard to do research for fantasy type of books, but did you have to do any research for it?
Well, I've steeped myself in myth, fantasy, folklore for decades. So the basic unicorn myths and structures and beats of what the various types of folklore accumulated around them were all there in my head. And I tried to get all those. And the first book crafts a reason for the villainous, the beloved, the main antagonist that draws on a lot of unicorn lore as it is, and sort of sets up the whole series to work in conjunction with existing unicorn lore. But spinning off my own direction, the greater challenge was creating the world for this to take place in, and giving reason why the unicorns were there and not here on Earth.
Okay. So what were the steps that you took to take it from the original idea to a finished product?
Oh, I just wrote draft after draft after draft after draft. That's what you do.
Okay.
I was telling you that originally the main character is going to be a little girl named Rafaela de Cruz from the barrio. Because I realized, we have a big movement now. We need more diverse books. I knew 30 years ago we needed more diverse books. 50 years ago I knew that. My first novel I tried to write, I had a young black boy as the character, main character. But I realized, and I thought, I'm not going to write her culture. I'm simply going to put her in another world. So what write about her experiences in another world. But after about 3 months, I realized I really didn't have a handle on the girl. And it wasn't feeling alive to me. So I put away aside everything I'd written and did what I've done before. I just took my daughter and put her, I said, well, what would Kara do, my daughter, if this happened to her? And I knew what her reactions would be. And so then the book in 3 months, I had a fully formed and full first draft that was pretty close to what came out. I mean, there was work to do, of course, but so in this case, I really had to know the main character intimately to make it work.
So you made the character your daughter, really?
Yes.
Aha, great idea. Okay. So what was the biggest challenge that you had in writing and putting out the original version?
Well, it was already under contract. The biggest challenge was creating the world itself. I fully realized alternate world. We call it world building now. That term wasn't around when I was working on this.
Right.
But I was trying to create. I had models. I had not actual mentors in terms of people who taught me, but mentors in terms of the texts that I read. So there was Tolkien, there was C.S. Lewis, there was Lloyd Alexander, all of them great world creators. And I was trying to do what they had done, what's been done in kids' fantasy, since we started publishing. And back with, of course, Lewis Carroll was one of the first world builders, but his world was completely mad in Alice in Wonderland. But trying to build a coherent, consistent, engaging world that people want to come and play in.
Great.
But I still get letters from people who say that world, I would retreat to that world when I was in a difficult home situation. I was in even, sometimes say, an abusive situation. And I fled to Luster, that's the name of the world where the unicorns are. That was where I would go in my mind to get away from all that. So books like this can serve a really seriously important psychological escape valve for kids in difficult situations.
Absolutely, they can. Yeah. So was there any character that you really loved or really hated from that book, from that series?
No, even the villainess, the beloved, the main antagonist, I didn't hate because I'd crafted this backstory for her. It's something I really feel good about. That gave her a solid reason for why she was being so horrible. So I actually had compassion for her to some extent, even though she was being awful, awful, awful. Um, of course, I love Kara because she's based on my daughter. I did
Yeah.
create two critters. Um, one small little sort of monkey-like sized creature that sprints around very fast and jabbers at her all the time, and one big lumbering bear-like kind of looks like sort of a man who's turning into a bear, or bear is turning into a man and stopped halfway through, called the Squidgem and the Dimble Thumb. And when I'm teaching fantasy writers, fantasy writing to younger people, I always ask them if they can match the name to the character because I talk about the importance of naming in fantasy. And basically, phonetically, the words match the characters. The little jabbery creature is called a squidgem. And squidgem is a word that you jabber. You can't draw it out at the k and the j. You can draw it j a little bit, but you have the k right there at the start. And it's the beginning of squirrel. The dimble thumb, the other character, first three letters are dim, which means slow or not too bright. Dim. Dimble, or slow letters, and thumb is the thickest and slowest digit of on your hand. Dimble thumb. His name tells you a lot about him. Naming is really important in fantasy literature. No one is ever better than Tolkien. You know, Mordor, Lothlorien, Galadriel. I mean, those names sing.
Hmm.
But he was
Very
a master of
interesting.
languages. He was a philologist. That's why he was so good at that.
Right. That's very interesting. You don't think about how important the names are.
Oh,
And
the wrong name sounds like dropping a lead coin, a lead nickel. They just they sound like brass at best. The right names are like silver bells in fantasy.
yeah, very true. Very true. And that kind of goes into another question I'm going to ask you later. Um, but uh, but now, what else can we expect from you in the near future?
I'm working on an opera.
Opera?
This this is not something um, that that I had planned, but the opportunity was offered to me. It's a science fiction fantasy opera set in the future, but it's based on the structure of Parzival. Parzival. It's a rock opera. Uh, there is an existing book and lyrics, but the book is problematic. I'm working with the composer to revise the book, which requires also writing new songs. And lyric writing is something I really love. I've written 4 musicals, three for kids and one act for adults. And I've said for over 30 years, musical theater is what I want to do when I grow up. So this dropped in my path, and I scooped it up and clutched it to my chest with cries of joy.
Oh, wow. That is great. I mean, I know you're an artist. I didn't realize that are you a musician as well?
No, I am not a musician, to my despair. As I despair that I'm not an artist, the kind of person who can draw pictures to go with his own books. I'm a word guy, but I've studied musical theater for 40 years. I know the structure. I understand the lyric structure, and I told my wife the other day, I feel like I'm going to write half this flat on my back with my eyes closed because I try to go to bed, and if I've been thinking about, I'm lying in bed and story ideas come and dialogue develops and even lyrics, and I keep getting up to write them down because I do know that I'm not going to remember in the morning, no matter how much I promise myself. Writers tell themselves two great lies. I'll work on the plane and I'll remember in the morning. You will not remember in the morning. So I get up and I write stuff down. And I go lay back down and I'm lying there for a little while. I'm like, oh, and I get up and write stuff down again. Um, so yeah, a lot of the inspiration for various songs and lyrics and scenic ideas comes when I'm trying to go to sleep.
I think that happens with a lot of people though. When you're lying there, all of a sudden these ideas come into your head.
What if you primed yourself? If that's what you've been thinking about, the ideas come. But in this case, it's I'm thinking about this thing, and it's a relaxation of your barriers. You let down your guard, and the stuff flows more easily.
Hmm. Wow. It's very true. Great. Now I have some questions for you on being a writer. What is your favorite part about being a writer on the whole writing and publishing process?
Writing the words "the end." I mean, I love writing, but most writers will tell you that the hardest thing they do in the morning is sit down and get started. We love it. We also resist it. And it takes time to get for a story to build momentum. So when I say writing the end, what I really mean is writing the words at the end, yes, but writing the end of the book, because often when I get to that point, I've been struggling with the story, and I get through that tough section in the middle when you're crossing the desert, and then things fall out of place, and the brain's been doing work, like this lying down in bed. The brain's been doing work that I'm not aware of, and it often happens that if I've been writing 3 or 4 pages or 5 pages a day, I get to the end and I write 10, 20, 25, in one case, 45 pages on the last day and just finish the book, because it all comes galloping out from stuff the brain had done that I wasn't aware of. So the earlier days of the price you pay for this glorious sensation of just feeling of just everything roaring out. I often tell the kids when I'm speaking in schools that, there are days when I sit at the keyboard and I feel like I might as well plant oats there because nothing's going to grow out of it. And there are other days, and I write something that's so fabulous, I stand up and scream and hug myself because I can't stand how wonderful I am. But you have a lot more oatmeal days than you have scream and hug yourself days. But you have to live through the oatmeal days to get to the scream and hug yourself days.
Uh-huh. So what do you consider the most challenging part of the whole writing process?
Putting my ass in the chair.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend who had a chance to interview Ray Bradbury. And she said to him, Mr. Bradbury, what's the secret of success? And he replied with one compound word. He said, ass glue.
Yep. Yeah, several people have said the hardest part is definitely sitting down and putting pen in hand or
Mm-hmm.
typewriter, or not typewriter. God, that shows my age. A computer and getting those words on paper.
There's a very funny movie called Throw Mama from the Train, where Billy Crystal plays a writer who's feeling blocked. And the movie starts with a montage of him doing things to avoid writing. He's making coffee. He's sharpening pencils. He's arranging papers. He's doing everything up to including tipping his nose to his forehead. And I was watching it with I saw it at the theater with my kid, who was like 16 or 17 at that point. And he was hysterical because he'd seen me do every single one of those things up to and including taping my nose to my forehead. So yeah, it's a thing. It's real. And if you ask people, what do you want to do? You say, I want to be a writer. I want to be a writer. Writers want to be writers, but we'll do anything to avoid it. It's just, we're psychotic. What can I tell you?
So what's been your favorite adventure during your writing career?
Well, what do you mean by adventure?
What has been the shining moment, I guess, that you've had? Your favorite thing that has happened to you during your writing career?
Oh, well, that's hard. There's a lot of fabulous things that have happened. I mean, there's the writing itself, and this has happened twice in 40 some years, where I wrote something and got it right the first time and didn't have to do anything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I think, and one of those is a story that I've made so much money in reprints that it's made more money than some of my novels. And I wrote it in about an hour and a half. I think, man, if I could just do that once a week, I'd be a rich man, but it happened once. High points are being at signings and having people come up, look at me and burst into tears. And not because they're terrified, like when I was working with kindergartners, like, what? It's because they have such strong and powerful memories of how much the books meant to them. The biggest adventure, though, was I was on a speaking tour in Egypt. And while we were there, the revolution broke out. And we got out by the skin of our teeth through a series of adventures and misadventures. That was a writing-related, actual, real-life adventure.
What happened?
Well, the revolution broke out, and
the revolution. Oh, okay.
yeah, and there were curfews, and you couldn't get to the airport. And once you were at the airport, you couldn't get through to get a plane. It was our guide did something that is extremely rare. He's a Muslim guide, and because of difficulties in getting to the airport because of the curfews, from where we were, he said, I will take you to my home. You'll spend the night with me. I'll drive you early in the morning. So we had a chance to do something that tourists in Egypt virtually never get a chance, which is to spend the night, an evening and a night, with an Egyptian family in just a basic Egyptian home. And we experienced the culture in an entirely different way. He was there, his wife and his daughters were there, and we just had a wonderful time. But all the time knowing that we were going to face this airport mob. The mob at the airport was literally shoulder to shoulder, front to back. You just couldn't move there. Getting out and getting the plane was a long, long story. But yeah, that was a genuine adventure.
That must have been terrifying.
Yeah, pretty much was.
I wouldn't say that was a favorite adventure, but that was an adventure, all right.
Well, it's when I was young, I wanted to have adventures. I had finally had a freaking adventure, and it was like, oh, okay, well, we lived through that. I'm not sure I'd do it again.
Okay. So, what is the greatest lesson that you've learned during your writing career?
I'm going to tell you something I teach. And it's a small thing, but I think it's incredibly important. And it's how to take a compliment. Writers are not good at it. People watch it, if you're designing, watch people, or at a convention, people come to write and they say, oh, I love that book so much. And the writer will basically try to deflect. Oh, yeah, so much. It's both. Because we're taught not to think too highly of ourselves from the time we're little kids. Who do you think you are? And why do you think so good of yourself? And what do you think you are to think that way? And you watch the great discomfort of writers as they try to deal with, especially gushing fans. And the answer is simply to say, thank you, and then move on with the conversation. And it saves embarrassment on both sides. The gushy gets embarrassed up a little bit. The writers, I see them, because I spend a lot of time at conference, are uncomfortable because they're like, well, no. And you actually, when you deny the compliment, somebody says something wonderful about your book and you try to say, wow, it's diminishing their love for it. And it's better to say thank you, appreciate that, and then move on.
Very, very important. Very true. So is that the one piece of advice that you would give to other writers?
No.
What else would you?
I have lots of advice I give.
Oh, please.
I make a lot of speeches at conferences, supposed to give advice all the time. It's when I'm in speaking in schools and they ask for my advice for writers, I give them 3 things. Simple. Read. You got to fill your brain with words. Write. And as Winston Churchill said to the people of England during World War II, never give up. Never give up. Never give up. School with people who were as good as I was, if not better, as writers, who will never be published because they were afraid of rejection. I know people who have manuscripts in their drawers they won't send out. Now, the truth is, the total downside of sending it out is you get a piece of paper back or now an email that says, we don't want it. Nobody, to my knowledge, has ever written a story so bad that an editor drove to their house, rang the doorbell. When the author answered the door, they smacked him in the face and said, don't do that again. The total downside is a piece of paper or an email that says no. So send it out. But you have to fix it. That's more than I realize, because I'm too stupid to be afraid most of the time. People say something, I'll say something in speech and people say, wow, that was really great. I think, was it? I just wanted to say it. That's what I thought. I don't care what people think. I want to say what I think. I didn't become a writer to lose my voice. But yeah, you have to be bold and you have to send it out.
Very, very good. Okay. Are there any groups, clubs, or organizations that you would recommend to other writers that might have helped you in your career, or that you could recommend?
If you want to write for kids, it's pretty much imperative that you join the SCBWI, Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, scbwi.org. Now, full disclosure here, I'm a member of the board of advisors, but that's an unpaid position. So I don't get anything by talking to join it. I serve because it does such good work. When you join, you get a thing called the book. And that book has so much information in it, including complete market reports that are kept up to date because we now do it as an ebook. And one reason I serve is it saved me so much time over the years. people contact me and they want me to say, can I come over and pick your brain? Well, do you go over your doctor to pick his brain? Can I come over and pick your brain for an hour? What I tell people is join the SCBWI. Read all the material you get when you join. If you still have questions, I will be glad to talk to you. And nobody ever calls back because everything they need is there when you join the SCBWI.
It's a great organization. Yeah. I have to admit, their conferences are wonderful.
Yes,
So,
that's the other thing I say. They have fabulous national conferences twice a year and also fabulous regional conferences. So they're within reach of everybody.
great. Okay, now I have questions about you as a person. What is one thing that most people don't realize about you?
God. Um, I don't know. I'm really very upfront about stuff. I don't keep much hidden. They don't realize how fabulous I'm. They don't know. Um,
That's a hard
they
question,
don't
I
realize
know.
that if I had my choice, I would be writing musical theater right this minute. But
You've already just revealed that, so
yeah, not a secret anymore.
nope. Okay. We'll go on to the next one. Um, what is or are your passions when you're not writing? And how do you make time for your non writing hobbies and things that you love?
Well, um, the first thing is I don't have a lot of spare time because I'm spending so much time on this uh, and writing related things. But those are my passions. I mean, like people sometimes say to me, my wife especially, so why don't you retire? I said, what am I going to do when I retire? Write the book I've always wanted to write? You know, there's no point in retiring to do something you've always wanted to do if you're already doing what you always wanted to do. My other passion is acting. I love performance. I work with local theater groups. I work with the Syracuse University, which is nearby. Their film students, I often act in films for them. Um, and that's related to my theater love in general. And I have run for over 25 years. For over 25 years, I have been, in addition to my writing, producing audiobooks. And full cast recordings are now kind of a thing, but basically, along with my business partner, Tim Ditlow, 25 years ago, we created the form of doing full cast recordings. They were very controversial. People thought they were radio theater like the BBC does, but those are always adaptations and abridgments. We were the first to ever do unabridged full cast recordings. We worked specifically with Kids Fantasy at that point. So I produced and directed and performed in, sometimes doing all three things, sometimes doing just one or the other, well over 125 audiobooks. But again, it's another side of performing and acting.
Yeah, wow. So how do you make time for doing those things?
Well, it used to be I cut myself short on sleep. Now that I'm 72 years old, it's not as easy to do that. I want to tell you. That's the most annoying thing that's come with age is having to sleep more. I hate it. I got stuff I want to do. Um, so you make, I don't do other stuff that I don't play sports. I don't spend a lot of time out drinking with the boys. But I love what I'm doing. So it's not like I need other outlets. I don't need a break from work because if I wasn't doing this for a living, I'd be doing it. It's what I'd be doing when I had free time from my real life job.
Okay. So, what does your writing space look like? And what do you need to have around you when you're writing or editing?
Well, my writing space looks like what you see behind me here. Um, I have actually it's a little more complicated than that. Years ago, I realized I need to have an office out of the house because my daughter would bring home people. Some kids say, "Oh, look, this dog followed me home. Can we keep it?" My daughter would bring home spare teenagers and say, "Look, she followed me home. Can we keep her?" Basically, it was his classmates who were in trouble or friends she knew who needed a space to stay. So we always had excess teenagers in the house. So at some point, I also decided I needed an assistant. Um, so I rented a space. I knew a couple other people who were writing that needed space out of their houses because they had teenagers too. And for 3 years, we had this office space we rented together. I rented it and they sublet for me. Then I decided there were problems with the space, noise problems. And I decided, what I'm spending on rent here, I could actually build equity with by buying a house and having us work there. So I bought a house that we used as an office for, that's been for more than 25 years now. I've had a separate house where I do my writing. I've had my other writers are gone now; they're running space, but my assistants here when I was doing the full cast audio full time, that was housed here. It's still housed here. We do it part time now. So I have a separate house, and it is across the street from the house where I now live. So my commute to work is 45 seconds. But I have two rooms here that I use. The room which I'm sitting in right now, which is my main desk and is surrounded by bookcases, but then a separate smaller room where I go to get away from my own mishigas, and I close the door and say to my executive assistant, "Okay, I'm going to be writing." So I go in that room and close the door and focus on my writing work.
Sounds good. Now, is there any special food or drink that you need to have with you when you're writing or
You
editing?
mean coffee?
Yeah, that.
Why, yes. As a matter of fact,
And writers often have furry or feathered or otherwise non-human companions with them to help them through their work. And do you have any, and do they help or hinder you?
well, we used to have an office cat, but that didn't entirely work out well for it. It's a long, long story. Um, but one, it wasn't good for the cat to be alone at the office all night, so that didn't work. And also, she was a demon. My staff at that point, I had 3 people working for me, and they all kept bandages in their desk drawers because this cat was so
Oh,
evil.
no.
We have 3 cats at home, and I have a desk at home where I work too. And the one that's my cat, most bonded to me, Luna, comes and sits on the desk next to me. And, it's a mix of inspiration and will you just leave me alone, cat? Because she wants to nudge the computer screen. But yeah, I've never in my adult life been without a cat.
Mhm. Uh-huh. My cat always comes up a lot of times when I'm Zooming and wants me to pet her.
Yes.
Definitely. Okay. Now I have 2 more questions for you. One is
Oh,
where can
gosh,
people,
I got like 35, 40, 50 more answers. Okay, let's stick with 2.
I can give you 50 more questions.
Now let's see who runs out of answers first, whether you run out of questions or I run out of answers.
So where can people find your work aside from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester? And I always have to do
Go
a
to
plug.
Annie's. Go to Annie's.
Right. I have to do a plug for Annie's. You can buy Bruce's books, or at least most of Bruce's books that we can get. We can order them for you. At if you call us at 508-796-5613. Or you can send us email at Annie's at orders@anniesbooksworcester.com. So where else can people find your books?
Well, wherever there's a good bookstore. That's my definition of a good bookstore, whether they carry my books or not. Many of my books are in print through my mainstream publishers. The Aliens, my homework series, my Teachers and Aliens series, the Magic Shop books, including Jeremy and Thatcher Dragon Hatcher, and a lot of others are in print and available through all the regular, both online sales places and Barnes and Noble and local bookstores. Your local bookstore can get anything that's in print that way. The things that I brought back into print myself, republished, you can get through my website or through the Big River, because those I don't have a distributor for, so you have to get them from me directly.
Okay. And my last question is, how can we follow your work and share your awesomeness?
Well, I'm on Facebook, Bruce Coville, and on Twitter at Bruce Coville. My website has ways to get a hold of me. So those are 3 basic ways.
Great. Well, that's all I have for you. I
That's
don't
all
have
I got.
I don't have the 50 more questions for you. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Bruce Coville. Hopefully we will be seeing you sometime, maybe at the store. You're a little far away to just drop in, but maybe sometime we could get you for a book signing.
That would be cool. That would be cool.
That would be great. Let us know if you're in the area.
Thanks for the airtime.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Take care.